Q, graduated, elevated. Now it's my time to shine, yeah, let's go. Graduated, elevated. Now it's my time to shine, yeah, let's go. Major moves.
Also, if you don't manage to get into the program, like the time it starts, they will defer you pretty quickly. So there's only like a 1 week leeway. So let's say for me it was August 15th, August 21st. The university says we're done by, we can see next year. Like you can't start anymore. So it's a little bit dicey, but yeah, I think for most people it's probably won't get to this. It was also because of Corona, because of what was happening in the Ukraine, and like all the embassies were probably overrun by kind of more important applications than mine, and so that's what I think happened. Because it was just this summer.
Okay. That sounds very stressful. Actually, it is cutthroat. Thinking about it.
I'm personally, like my whole family is built on this, collapsed Soviet Union, and then they went out. I lived in pretty much every country in Europe, had so many visas, so many passports, like moved around. It's like I know that stuff with visas, it is frustrating, but if you read literature from the early like the mid 20th century, how people lived around the Second World War, how they used to migrate on trains and go to just flee from Nazi Germany, that's a lot more hardcore than what we have to go through with visas these days. So I always urge people to read Erich Maria Remarque or Hans Fallada or something, to just like get in touch with real problems that can be faced at least. Yeah.
Well, I think the term real, it's subjective. It is subjective because
for me it's in the sense, like I don't have real problems in that sense. Like my visa got delayed, but like nothing really depends on it. That's what I mean by that. Like I can easily switch to New Zealand, like, so that's what I mean. Yeah.
No problem. So in regards to, I think that the other thing that you touched on was, you coming up with a solution in terms of the challenges that you faced when you're doing your volunteering in the US. You came up with the web design business, and then you still had a startup previously. So the other thing that I usually get from other PhD students, they've got ideas, but there's certain things that you sign, and they feel like, I'm not confident in business. I've come up with this amazing idea, and they end up leaving it to the university because they don't know about signing, for the rights, etc. So since you've had a startup when you were younger, and then you've had another one, and they're all doing great, could you take us through that process? So if someone's sitting at home and they're thinking, I've come up with that idea, it's actually mine, but the uni has taken it, what can they do?
I think I don't really know how the university does it, because none of this stuff that I've been doing had anything to do with the university. That's actually also a concept that I just recently discovered, that yes, they have like intellectual property rights on what you come up with. The one advice that everybody gave me is just to talk, because every university will have an outlet for IP issues, so you can talk to them. And America, and like a lot of the interviews, when I mentioned like I would like to do that, then they would always say, okay, oh yeah, sure, we did this with this and this company, or there's this and that company. They would send me links, and one could reach out and ask those people, like, you developed this single molecule microscopy, like how did you market it, like how did you do that? And so I guess the best advice is always just to go and ask people. Like, you'd be surprised how many people are actually happy to give advice, especially to somebody who's genuinely interested in the outcome. Yeah. Just ask.
In terms of starting a business, then, what are the key 3 skills that you can say that a PhD student needs, or they already have and they don't know, that they can actually run a business, a successful business?
Yeah, I'd say number 1 is always consistency or perseverance. Like whatever you do, however bad you are, it's kind of an exponential progression. So no matter how bad you are, it's about like how many times you exercise whatever skill it is. So that's number 1, like you have to do that. I would say number 2 is probably a sort of humility or something, like understanding what you can't do. Like, I'm not very good at marketing, or I'm just like, sometimes you're not very good or just utterly bored by something like finance, for example. It's utterly boring to me. I don't want to deal with that. And like our company was crawling for 2 years until we decided to hire somebody who's actually done finance and loves finance, and then poof, suddenly we got capital and it started moving. So to understand like that it's really essential to do that. I think that is essential. And then I don't know, the third thing is probably empathy, because you will not work alone, and empathy always requires you to deal with people as people and not as resources, and that will kind of make people stick to you. That's what everything is built on when we do favors, when we interact as friends, as family. Like it's always built on this empathy bonds, and so we can create those in business and make like the business in a way much more. Like some people would say it's like a kind of more of a feminine way of leading a business by creating a community rather than kind of the masculine way of creating like a hierarchy. So that's like you need both in a way, but we glorify the kind of the more masculine way. That's how it's always been done. And like the more feminine way is something that's new now, and that's now coming up, with like books like Lean In, or like really big female CEOs that didn't exist like 20 years ago even. So I think those three. So
thank you very much.
And persistence.
I guess, when it comes to, I think there's something that you touched on, which is knowing your limitations. To say you realize that, we hate finance, and you've got somebody that's skilled to come in and hit the ground running, and they were able to do that. So the question I have then, you've started your businesses, you've traveled, you've studied in India, done the things that you love. Why come back and start a PhD at 37?
Well, I mean, I don't know. That's again, like the thing is, what do you really want to do in life? And I think at the core, we have to enjoy life. Like we have to enjoy. Enjoying does not mean we're completely selfish. Enjoying is also like doing things for others because we enjoy doing things for others. But I think that was one of the main motivations, that just, doing web design, doing websites. I did like a ton of real estate websites. It pays great, but it's not like fulfilling in a way. You're not making either discovery, you're not working on something like really nerdy and unknown. Like there has to be some sort of inner voice that tells you like, hey, like why don't you do that? And I think that's the one thing, is to differentiate the voices in your head from expectation versus your own desire. Your true desire or your dharma. And Jack Sparrow again has this compass that always points towards his greatest desire, not north and right. So north and south are the expectations of, let's say, your parents. So maybe your parents are academics. They say you should go into academia, or they are very money focused. They say, okay, you should be a doctor and so on. So you grow up with that expectation, like let's say 18, 20 years, 22 years, you've been growing up with that. So of course you have like a momentum going in terms of your values. And so that momentum can spill out into just continuing your PhD, and that is just momentum. You have to understand it's momentum. It's not your own desire. And so understanding like what is your desire, that is where you start moving towards where you want to go. And like for me, I felt like I want to do that. And it's also something that you have to kind of uncover slowly, because you talk to that person. It's not that one day I woke up, called the lab, and then poof, I was there. It was like a 6 months process. I first thought maybe I should do a bachelor, and then I talked to like 4 people, student advisors, and they told me like, well, you also have to take English classes and learn the history of the United States. And it's like, that doesn't make any sense. Okay, let's just go. Maybe like a master's would be possible. And then the master's person told me like, but why don't you just get a PhD? And I was like, but I can't get a PhD. Well, you can do this or that or that. And then, slowly it developed. So it takes a little bit of courage to just see if you like something and just explore it, but also just like feel what you really want, because there's absolutely nothing wrong in doing what we really want. And indeed, we admire the people that do what they really want, and we tolerate people that do what they really want recklessly. Like that's what I say. Like we see all those big CEOs, Elon Musk, like completely reckless person, but somehow admired by like a big majority. Like, he's not a nice person to be around. He fires left and right, is super impulsive, but we somehow say, oh, wow, he's on a mission. Oh, look, he's colonizing Mars. Only because he pursues what he wants to do. only because of that, I think, and that's why we have to be really true to what we want, not be afraid of that.
I like that. I actually like that. So back to community, which is a word that you've used in terms of business. So the question I have is that I've realized that you've got a community going on Twitter. You share a lot with us PhD students, and the content is there. Could you take me through that and the passion behind that? Since you haven't started your PhD, what's got you into that, and what made you realize that there's a gap?
I'd say it got me into that as spite. No, because I was always using like all kinds of tools. The Twitter channel is about using like small or big productivity hacks, systems, methods to thrive in academia. Because I've seen like how my lab was doing research, which was Word documents being sent back and forth, this ancient software. And I was like, yeah, like there's better ways to organize your own knowledge. So I started using that, and I was using that like already for a while. And then I just saw on Twitter somebody posted this super basic tutorial on a tool that I've been using. I was like, I can do that better. And so I just had like this spiteful thing. And for a day, I wrote down like a really long article and posted that. And I was lucky enough that this first tweet basically took off pretty well because I commented then. And then I was like, okay, that seems to work. And, like on Twitter, you can learn anything. There's like half of Twitter is people teaching Twitter users to become better Twitter users, to tweet better, to become better writers, and to teach others to be better writers and better Twitter users. It's just, it's like completely like a recursive loop there. But some people actually share real content, and so that's what I wanted to do, to share like how do you organize your research better, how do you use visual thinking, how to use like methodologies on actually organizing your knowledge, and I present what I learned, what I kind of come up with, and just make it as nice, quick videos and see where this is going. And it's going good so far. And I have my first webinar next week, and it's already like 80 people or so are signed up. So it's pretty awesome. Yeah, I'm really grateful that it's happening.
It is amazing. I think I've gone through one of yours in good detail when I was still, when you're still fresh in the morning, so it actually goes in. And I actually sat there and I was like, I'm going to go through it. So I could see that you put a lot of time into it. That was number one. And like how to phrase things so that it's not, sometimes when you read stuff, it's like, did you really write it to educate or just to show off? Like, which one is it? And, I love the way the style that you've adopted, because I'm not like, I wouldn't say I'm a geek, but I am in research. I love research, but I'm not a geek. So I don't like to confuse myself. But I understood what you were saying.
Compliment is to you that you actually understand what I'm writing. It's not that the writing is so good. It's just, you're very good at it.
Now you throw it back at me. So in terms of the next few questions then to round off is, in terms of equality and diversity, you've pretty much, I think you've touched on it in terms of women as CEOs. What's your thoughts in terms of our current direction? Because we know that when we look at the data, some women are still getting paid less than men, and they're still fighting. Even though they've got the titles, they still don't have a voice in the boardroom, for example. What's your take on that, and how can we make it better going forward?
I think that the biggest, the root of the problem is that we lack role models. And those role models are that which we only have now. So now there can be a generation of, let's say girls growing up looking at a Sheryl Sandberg saying, oh, this is who I want to become. Men had this all along. So we kind of grew up into the role and it feels natural, but women have to slowly grow up into that role. And that will take some time. I don't think we can like force it. We just have to allow it to grow naturally. Just like a tree is much more stable because it grows organically and it can sway than a house, let's say. The house, 20 years, it will, something will crack, the whole thing will collapse. So we have to grow like things in societal changes that grew over thousands of years. They need a couple of generations to also decelerate and to get to the point where they feel natural. And like what is happening now, okay, we introduce maybe quotas or different other ways of kind of forcing minorities or anybody who like into a thing. I think it's good to a degree. It's not good when it becomes a political tool, because at the end, if you put somebody who doesn't know anything, but they're put there because of just that what they represent, like who they are rather than what they do, then you also dilute what the whole system is doing. And so you have to find a really good balance to hire people that can become role models for people, and at the same time, don't just have the function of being role models, but actually do what they stand for. And if you manage to get that balance, then I think in a generation or two we will have changes, and all these things will be like much less pronounced than they are now.
So I guess I like what you're saying, but then I feel like it could be a topic on its own that we could discuss like till next year. So I'm going to move on to the next question, which is, in your opinion then, do you think education in terms of getting a master's or, a PhD or your undergrad breaks the poverty cycle? Or do you think it doesn't work?
Yeah, to be honest, of course, education will always open you doors, not maybe necessarily because you work in what you studied, but just because you know how to use knowledge and you can kind of think about different ways. But if you think about it, like the most financially successful people don't necessarily have degrees. Degrees have a very big part of you really want to do that. And the best PIs will be the ones that really just love what they're doing, and they're not necessarily doing it for financial gains. So, I don't know how it is, with maybe with very high education, like PhDs, they probably won't have such a big impact on poverty, because you're probably fine with a bachelor and some street knowledge in a way of how to, run your business, see opportunities, move around the world. Like, I think you'll gain much more by working on yourself, your own identity, your own self-confidence, like all these things. Because yes, you have a better confidence, and you probably will negotiate, let's say 10-20% higher salary. Like, maybe you will get the same thing if you have a master's instead of a bachelor's. But then what is easier, to get a 2-year master's or to work on your confidence and just negotiate better? So there's like different ways. But, that's a very big political question. And I'm just, like a person who is bumming around the world and trying different PhDs until something sits. So.
I think you discredit yourself, because you're not just bumming around. From our discussion here, what I've heard from you is that, you look for an opportunity, and if that door is shut, you're still going to, go to the next door, literally, and try again. And you've had an opportunity in the US, but you've also looked at New Zealand. So if next year you're like, do you know what, I don't like New Zealand, you could still move to the US because you've got a place. So it's like you've got options. You create options for yourself. That's what I'm getting from you.
My mother will have a heart attack if I tell her that I couldn't possibly change my PhD once more. She's like, Ilya, what is happening to you? I'm praying to God every single day and you're still somewhere there. Like snot.
Figuring out.
I have some sort of crazy analogy like this. So yes, but I see what you're saying. Thank you so much.
No problem. I guess the last question, you'd be glad to know, is, what do you think of PhD Hard Talk? Do you think it's beneficial for us PhD students? Obviously, we've had a chat. Or do you think, do you know what, Noma, call it a day, pack it in, it's not working?
No, PhD Hard Talk, I am on your interview. If I would think that, why would I give you an interview? No, of course, like everything that is motivational, everything that kind of helps you dispel this mystery of what is a PhD, and like helps you to put different, faces and different like personalities on top. It's not just this ominous thing, but it's actually people doing something. That is what brings, the abstract to the human level. And that's kind of from the mind to the heart. And I think that's the process that you're facilitating, kind of from the mind to the heart, because we're talking heart to heart, yes. And so that's what people are relating. But yet we're talking about that concept up here. There's a Ph.D, poverty, and like big diversity topics. So yeah, so we're bringing that down. And I think people should appreciate that, or I hope they appreciate that. So yeah, thank you definitely for inviting me and also for doing that. And being like a very good host.
Thank you. I guess before we finish off, in regards to your webinars, if people want to get in contact with you, where do they find you?
I think at this point only on Twitter, but I will probably have by the time that interview airs, the domain effortlessacademic.com, something like that. But yeah, the effortless academic is easy to remember.
Yes, it is. So remember, hashtag project dissemination to the world, hashtag sustainable knowledge to the world. But if you do want to get in contact with Illya, his details there at the bottom, Twitter, LinkedIn, and also the link for the website, and any other conferences that he may be attending. Do get in contact if you want to say hello. He might not respond immediately, but life goes on. He will get back to you when he can. Please don't harass him. Thank you very much again, and don't forget to subscribe, like, and share.